Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hempville CBD podcast. My name is Ben Cooey, owner of Hempville CBD in South Haven, Mississippi, and also owner of the website, hempvillecbd.com. I'm sitting here with my producer, Derek Michaud. How are you this morning?
What's up, Ben? How are you?
We don't have 2 inches of ice outside like we did last week.
For context, last week, the Memphis, DeSoto County area had snowpocalypse 2024. City shut down for a week and a half. No school. Crazy. Now it's 60 degrees outside.
Yes. There's nothing better to be snowed in with teenage daughters and a wife that's a workaholic and can't go to work.
But it was a great time to consume some Delta 8. I will say that.
I did every day just so not only I, but so my family could make it through. They didn't take the Delta 8. I did, but they didn't have to put up with me because of that. I was just laid back and okay.
So yeah, we had to cancel last week. So we took a week off, but good to have you back, Ben.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to today's episode. It's going to be a crazy topic. It's scientific research versus societal and ideological perceptions.
Yes.
So that's loaded. We got a lot to talk about.
If you followed our podcast from the beginning, I started off with our story. Then I started talking about the different product segments such as topicals, edibles, smokables, things of that nature. Then we got into other aspects of it, such as the political side of things. And now we talked about the science, really the science behind it and what certain scientific studies. And now we're at, we got the science down, but our societal and ideological views on these things they haven't caught up with the science. They're lagging way behind the science. And the question is why? And that's kind of what we're going to get into today. All my life, every time I would try to talk to someone about these cannabinoids, the number one response back was, that sounds good, but the science, there's not enough sufficient evidence. There's not enough sufficient evidence in the science to prove what you're saying. That's starting to go away. And the reason it's going away is because in the last 10 years, there's been over 32,000 studies dealing with CBD and THC. And those studies are dealing with or addressing how it's used, how the effects of the products, and then what is the medical value? Where can this be applied therapeutically? And, with 32,000 studies, that's a large amount of data. And that data is now beginning to fill in those knowledge gaps that we had about these cannabinoids, or the average person is starting to fill that in. And it's starting to take away that old excuse of, the science, there's not enough sufficient evidence. The science is not there yet.
They can't use that excuse anymore.
They still use.
They still do.
They still do.
Yeah.
But now when they do, I can pull up a study.
Yeah.
And not only one study, I can pull up multiple studies.
You have backup.
I have backup. Where before we didn't have that.
Right.
And we didn't have that because it was an illegal drug. There wasn't a lot of money to study it. I know the University of Mississippi has, they were like one of the few that could do research with marijuana. My mother was actually one of the researchers that did that type of work. But they were like the only ones. But now there's more and more studies because of some of the changes. But before then, it was always, not enough evidence. Well, that's starting to go away. And that excuse of there's not enough evidence was denying us what we already knew, that CBD and THC not only is helpful, but it's good. And that what that excuse was doing was denying us what we already knew, which was CBD and THC was not only good, but it was helpful in a lot of these ailments that we're talking about. And, but our government and our society, for some reasons, lagging behind because we still look at it as bad, even though now we have scientific research that says, no, these are, if used properly, these are good cannabinoids and they help out a lot. So where is that gap between the science and how we as a society view these cannabinoids. That's what we're talking about today. So what's causing this? So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I mean,
the word that comes to my mind is stigma, right?
Yes.
That's still the ideological side of things.
Well, there are several factors going into this, but I list probably what I thought was the top three.
Let's go.
One is the scientific research that has been done is really not promoted to the public. I mean, you can get on Google and find it, but you got to be looking for it. Mm-hmm. But as far as when these studies come out and the studies come out with very good things, positive things to say, I mean, it doesn't hit the news ever. The only thing you ever hear on the news is the negative side. And usually when you listen to the news, you're only getting half the story. And we got a perfect example of that later on in the podcast, but you're not getting the full story. So the science isn't promoted. The scientific research is and that is why the scientific research is outpacing our societal norms. Also marketing. As a business owner, I cannot tell you how hard it is to market these products. The FCC, I cannot say, I know in the beginning there's a question of whether or not I could say CBD on the radio. Now I can, but I cannot say THC, THCA.
Really?
Or any of the other things that we do on the radio or on certain social media platforms like Facebook. And I know there are people out there that said, oh, I saw this on Instagram or I saw this on Facebook, and it does promote. I've talked to my IT people about that, and I've showed them the same type of ads, and my IT people have said, yes, you can do it. But what happens to those people is they set up an account, they'll do it for like a week, eventually get kicked off, and then they'll set up another account and under another name and do it. And I said, well, that's not how I operate.
It's hard to build a following.
It's hard to build a following. You're getting your message out, but you're not building a following.
Yeah.
Plus you are gaming the system, but anytime, I'm 55 years old. I'm old enough to know you can only game the system for so long until it catches up, and then the system will knock you out of the game.
Yeah. And
I would just rather do things right the first time and move forward and not have to look over my shoulder thinking, are we going to have to set up a new web page or this, that, and the other?
It's too much work.
It's too much work. And
cost.
It does cost a lot of money.
You're going to set up a new website every 3 months? You know what I'm saying?
I can tell you our website, I have probably invested about $30,000, if not more in it. Mm-hmm. I can't rebuild that every couple of months.
An e-commerce website is a whole different animal, man. That's not something that you just redo.
And you got to be wary too, because I know I've seen this happen where people would order, and it happened in my industry. People would order product, a website would be selling product. They have no physical store. It's just a website. And all of a sudden that product does something to somebody in a negative way. For instance, remember the last podcast, the gas station Neptune elixir I was telling you about that caused that guy to have to go to the hospital after he drank it because it had a drug in there that was illegal.
Almost killed him.
That product I heard that on the radio. That's why I didn't know the full name coming up, but I did some more research. That product was called Neptune's Fix, and it's sold in gas stations. But I've seen websites that sell certain products like that. All of a sudden, a lot of customers will have bad experiences and they'll complain to the Better Business Bureau. The owner of that website can shut that website down and open up another one in 24 hours under a different name. You never know the difference. And, it's almost like they vanished off the face of the earth. You can trace back all the IP addresses and stuff, but unless you hire a lawyer and spend $85,000 doing that, which most people can't do, that's probably not going to get done. So you got to be wary. An online store is much different. I have a physical store as well that's connected to the online store, so that kind of grounds us in a way of doing things right rather than trying to play those games.
Awesome.
But the scientific research is not promoted. Marketing is restricted so bad I can't get the message out. That's one of the reasons I have this show. Is with a podcast I can say these things and talk the way I want to, like we do in the store. and the podcast gives me the freedom to do it. That's why we had this.
Yeah,
now,
we don't have FCC regulations on podcasting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was us as a society. We need to quit whispering about these products like there's something bad. I mean, my neighbor, we've had some new people move into our subdivision. Now, I live in a subdivision where we got a little bit of everything. We got some old people that have retired that have lived there for 50 years. We got a lot of young people coming in, a lot of business owners for whatever reason live in my neighborhood. And it's just an average neighborhood. We're not talking anything. Yeah. You know, all the houses are 70s, 80s type houses. But he's telling me, oh yeah, so-and-so moved in over there. They're like us. They do the gummies. And, oh yeah.
It's a secret society.
Yeah, these people,
right?
These people over here, he's an attorney. Oh yeah, they're like us. They do the and he's whispering to me and there's nobody around us.
It's like a speakeasy, right?
But it's just when you talk about it, it's like we got to whisper.
Right.
We need to stop whispering about that because the whispering is making it sound like we're doing something bad when these are legal products. People are using this in replace of medicine. Some people are using it for recreational, but if it's in replace of alcohol, guess what? You're better off.
Yeah.
Those three things are part of the reason we have that gap between the science and society. Now, current research is being done now on a wide scope of topics from cannabis pharmacology to diverse medical applications. And this is very important to us. And the reason it is very important is because it contradicts what has always been said about cannabis. It has no medical value whatsoever. The research is saying that's not true. And the other thing with this is it makes us question the classification of this drug from a Section 1 drug where it's categorized with cocaine, LSD, heroin, and meth. There's no reason why this drug should be categorized with those.
Because it's still under that category?
It's still under that category. It's a Schedule 1 drug. And
yeah, that's wild.
Scheduled 1 is LSD, it's meth, it's cocaine. CBD, THC, marijuana, it does not have the same effect or the same result that those things do. Those things will ruin your life.
Yes, not even close.
Now, if you abuse marijuana, it can ruin your life.
Yeah.
But, you know, everything has to be handled responsibly. But when you get into meth and cocaine, there is no, the responsibility of that is don't use it.
Yes.
There is no, if you use them responsibly, you'll be okay.
No, it's poison.
It's poison. That's exactly right. Also, with the recategorizing of it has no medical value, the scientific research is not only saying it has medical value, but it can help out with so many things. It can help out with cancer, autoimmune disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, anxiety, chronic pain, and so much more after that. I mean, they're finding more and more things these cannabinoids can help out with. Now, my whole life, all I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard this too, you've heard, CBD, THC, those are dangerous drugs. They're gateway drugs. They're addictive. They have no medical value whatsoever. The people who want to use them just want to get high. And I started to, as I was writing that down and thinking about it, I was like, I just explained what alcohol was. I mean, alcohol does, for the most part, does not taste good. Most people drink alcohol because they want to get a little buzz, little drunk. Alcohol is addictive. Alcohol is a gateway drug because those people that become alcoholics and are drinking the hard stuff, they all started drinking the light stuff, beer, when they were younger, and then they moved up.
I've mentioned this before. You're sitting across this table from a recovering alcoholic of 10 years that alcohol killed all my inhibitions. And then that's when I got into other drugs in my youth. It was all because of alcohol.
And my mother was an alcoholic. She was not an alcoholic when she was raising us. What had happened to her was that She was a great mother, because when you say, oh, my mother was an alcoholic, you're thinking, oh, you must have had a bad childhood. No, I had a great childhood. She was a great mother. But what happened was she was a single mom raising 3 boys, all of our birthdays in 1 month. So
whoa,
that makes it rough.
That hurts the purse.
And she always had birthday parties for us. So now that I look back, and she was working and putting herself through college. What happened to her was she had gotten remarried. I had a stepfather. We had, grown up into men, had moved out of the house, moved out of the town that she lived in, because we had families and we had to go get jobs. And the town at that time was very small, and there wasn't a job big enough to support what we were wanting to do. And my stepfather died. And when he died, and I didn't realize this, going back into that house and being alone all the time after you've raised kids there, and now you got your husband and your second life, and it just vanishes like that. Going home every day, I'm sure, was very painful. Work was a whole lot better than going home. And that's usually not a good sign. And she ended up falling into a depression. And these cannabinoids weren't around back then. And, for somebody who grew up in let's say the late 40s, early 50s, if you're depressed, what's the first thing you do?
Drink.
Yeah. Girlfriend breaks up with you. Let's go to a bar and get smashed.
Let's get some whiskey and drink our sorrows away.
Yeah.
Easy for me to say.
and what is funny is my stepdad, before he met my mother, was an alcoholic, and my mother would not put up with it. And so he got off of it, and he was in great shape, but he had a heart attack for other reasons, and that's what made him pass away. And my mother, who was completely against it, after he was gone and all the kids were gone, guess what she started doing? Drinking. It started off small, and then it got to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just took over her whole life. And by the time we realized what was going on, it was too late. She was already, we weren't going to be able to kind of pull her back in. Plus she, I don't know if she saw it or not, but she wasn't trying to get the help. And everybody knows, if you're addicted to something, no matter what you do, you're not going to get off of it unless you want to get off.
You have to.
Right. And so she was an alcoholic, and I look down here, dangerous, gateway drug, addictive. Alcohol has no medical value whatsoever. In fact, it hurts your body more than anything. And you're just doing it to get high, or you're just doing it to get drunk. That is alcohol. The thing is, when we talk about these cannabinoids, it's the exact opposite. CBD, THC. Is it dangerous? No, not if you use it responsibly and buy it in a store, not off the street. Is it a gateway drug? People claim it is. I don't think it is, because it's not addictive the way alcohol is. And the FDA and the Department of Health and Human Services are recommending to the DEA that it's low abuse rate, and it does have medical value. So that's important. And we just answered, it does have medical value. Yeah, there's some people that use these products because they just want to get buzzed, just like the alcohol. But they're not going to get you addicted. They're not going to hurt your body. You're getting all the positives, none of the negatives. It's like, it's like if you do alcohol, everything's on a downward spiral. I listened to an alcoholic this morning. He said, man, when I was on alcohol, I couldn't sleep. My relationship with my wife was terrible. The relationship with my kids was terrible. I couldn't think straight. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, man, when I take THC, my relationship with my wife is better. I can think clearly. And, I think of things that I normally wouldn't think of when I'm not on it. And I was like, it just makes life all that much better. Plus, hey, I'm getting a good night's sleep. And usually that's when I take it, so I can get to sleep. So it's all the side effects you get with alcohol. You get none of those. In fact, they improve those aspects of your life with the THC. Now, a vast amount of research on these cannabinoids the last 10 years have challenged that narrative of this drug has no value in it, and it's just a dangerous drug. But because it contradicts that, it's starting to highlight that, hey, as I mentioned, this is a Section 1 drug. And it's starting to shed light on that Section 1 classification. And now they're talking about moving it to Section 3. Mm-hmm. But we're going to get into that later on in this podcast too. But that is going to be very important. Even though the science says that these cannabinoids, and the science proves, not that it says it, but it proves it, it is good. It will help. We had a podcast where it talked about opioid addiction and about how THC could help reduce the amount of opioids used in people who take that drug. But one of the key things was, as long as there are roadblocks and hoops and hurdles people have to jump through to get these cannabinoids, like an ID card, the government tracking them, giving up some rights in order to get the medical card, those hurdles will prevent people from getting the medicine. That's what their research proved. And in conclusion, that these studies came out with, these cannabinoids help get people off opioids, but you got to loosen up the restrictions on them, because as you put these hurdles up, people just give up and say, you know what, I'll just go to the street and buy it. Because I want a private sale. I don't want the government and the whole world knowing I'm buying it in a dispensary.
And then you don't know what you're getting.
Correct. Plus, you don't have those problems in my shop because we're not a dispensary, but we sell basically the same thing, just in a different form. And so you have the privacy. But who's giving us the pushback? You know, who's always pushing back or slanting the stories? And it always comes down to who's in control? The government, the people that make the laws.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, and this is just going to be my opinion, why does the government give us so much pushback? Well,
it's competition.
If you're a politician, you need two things. You need money for your campaign, and you need votes. And usually you're getting the money so you can get votes, you know, advertise, promotion, stuff of that nature.
Now the source of the money, right?
Yeah. Who's giving the money to the politicians?
Right.
If these cannabinoids and everything are illegal, then there's not a lot of money for us to give them to lobby for us. Now we do have, as it's, you know, over the past 10 years of now, I think we got 40 states that have some form of marijuana or these cannabinoids. We have lobbyists as well. But Big Pharma, who do we compete with? Big Pharma. You're not telling me Big Pharma is not giving massive contributions to the politicians to make it harder and harder to put hurdles up in people's way so they don't get these products?
Yeah.
That is why we get the pushback. But I'm starting to see a shift in that. The majority of the public wants these cannabinoids. And I'll give you a perfect example. Mississippi, the state we're in right now, they put this on the ballot and they did not think it was going to pass. And it passed with like 74% of the people in this state wanted medical marijuana.
And this would be considered a red state.
Oh, yes, it's very red. And that's one of the reasons I live here, is because it is a red state. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, the problems we see out west with the riots or up north with the crime, we don't have that here. That is why everybody's leaving those areas and moving down south.
Especially our county right here in DeSoto County.
Correct. Everybody's leaving the big cities, even Memphis. They're all leaving Memphis and coming into North Mississippi because of the quality of the school districts, the low crime rate, everything else. So in a red state, 74% of the people voted for this. And I don't think the state was prepared for that, because they have done nothing but drag their feet on policy ever since it's been passed, drag their feet on licensing and everything, the regulations, everything that goes with it. But that's starting to change. And the reason it's starting to change is, like I said, politicians need money, but they need your vote more importantly. Mm-hmm. Now, your vote, individual vote, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but that's not how a politician looks. Politicians group us into blocks of people, segments of people. So they're looking at, where can I get the most votes? And if 74% of the people are saying we want this, but their money is coming from Big Pharma that doesn't want it, The politician kind of has to wiggle their way. They're having to navigate now a treacherous, I guess, pathway.
I think they look at the votes, right? And they say, we want those votes.
Correct. Or they look at it and say, you know what? We might wait till after election time to decide on this law or this regulation because most people aren't going to be happy with it. And so I'll wait until I'm elected and then put the hammer down.
Yeah.
And that gives me some time. Or they're saying, look, if I vote against this, I'm definitely not going to get reelected. So I'm going to vote for it. So we're starting to see that change. The public demand is what's causing that. We just got to get there because the public's demanding it and it's out there, but it's out there in many different forms, and some of those forms aren't good. Now, an example of change, the FDA and Department of Health and Human Services has recommended to the DEA that cannabis be switched from a Scheduled I drug categorized with LSD, methamphetamine, and cocaine. Schedule I drug means no medical value, highly addictive, high abuse rate, to a Section 3 classification. Now, this is extremely important for us because Section 3 basically means this drug has medical value and it has a very low abuse rate, meaning it's non-addictive. I mean, you can abuse it, but the odds of that are very low. And the reason I say that's important is how many people do you think are standing on the sidelines because we're an unregulated industry? There are people out there that they only want to do what the government says or what their doctor says because they're probably like I was 20 years ago. I'm not too sure about this. I've never done cannabis or anything else. I've always heard it was dangerous. I just don't want to go there. Well, once they reschedule it to Section 3 and the government comes out and says, hey, this does have medical value and it does not have a high abuse rate, like it's non-addictive, so you're going to be okay. Yeah. There's a lot of people standing on the sidelines that are like, okay, I think I'll give it a try.
What they're hearing is the word safe.
Yeah, exactly. What they're hearing is this is safe. You are not going to take this and become a drug addict. You are not going to take this and ruin the relationships you have with your family members and people around you, the way meth and cocaine and all these other hard drugs do. That is important because when you're in pain, when you need something, you need to get the right product to take care of that. And if you can get a product with no side effects, the way your prescription medication does, there are a lot of people on the sidelines. And when they hear the government say, and actually the FDA and Department of Health and Human Services, they recommended a Schedule III classification to the DEA, but the DEA has the final call on it. So they're the ones that are going to determine whether it's Section 1 or Section 3. But if it gets changed to Section 3, like I hope it is, then the average consumer who does not use this product is hopefully with the education will look at this and say, okay, what I'm hearing is it's safe. I'm hearing the FDA, the Health and Human Services, the DEA, Drug Enforcement, they're all saying it's not, you're not going to get addicted. You're not going to become a drug addict. And this does have medical value. It's not about getting high or getting buzzed. It will help. And if you are somebody who has an ailment like cancer, you're going to do anything to make that go away. And what you want to do, not that these make it go away, but they can definitely help with the process. You don't want to take something that's going to put you in a worse situation, like some of the prescription medications. Take this and it'll make your skin rash go away. However, you will have suicidal thoughts. I mean, I wasn't thinking of suicide before, so why would I want to take your medicine and then have that now?
The antidepressants, when on TV, part of their commercial is going through the side effects, and one of them is suicide. Right. It's an antidepressant, but we have to tell you that there's chance of suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. Or the one I love is explosive diarrhea. No matter what my problem is, I definitely don't want that problem.
Nope.
But when they schedule it from to a Section 3, Section 3 means you're on the same level as Tylenol with codeine.
Okay.
Very basic medication.
Would pseudoephedrine?
I don't know.
Like Sudafed D, the pseudoephedrine stuff. It's regulated to the point where they put you in a system so you can't buy too much. So I wonder where that lies. But I would think,
because isn't that what you can... Is that the one that people...
You can make meth with it.
I bet it's a Schedule 2 or a little higher, because that drug is not bad, but you can take something out of it and create something really bad. What are you going to take out of marijuana that's going to be really bad?
And it's in this weird spot where it's not on the shelf. It's behind the counter, but you don't need a prescription for it.
Correct. But they're just tracking.
They're tracking.
I bet, I don't know, but I'm betting that's probably a Schedule 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they move it to Schedule 3, you're saying not only does it have a low abuse potential and it has medical value, that there's low physical and psychological dependency on it too. Now, what this will also do is it's a step towards more legalization of these cannabinoids, which most Americans support. Also, it facilitates more research. One of the problems we had in the past was, because it was illegal, because it was Section 1 drug, there wasn't a lot of money going into the research, because why would there be? It's illegal. They're studying all the other things. Also, where is that research money coming from? It's coming from my competition, Big Pharma.
Right.
So now that the science is coming out that these are helpful, these are good, it's facilitating more research.
The science is catching up.
The science is catching up. Hopefully, it will ease more banking restrictions, because banking in this industry, whether you're a dispensary or a hemp industry like mine, I can get a bank account for my business, but not all banks will accept it. And it's still tricky.
Yeah.
It's still very hard. I can't just walk into a bank and do it. Like, I went into a bank. I've been a member of this bank since I was a kid, since I've had a bank account. The president of the bank is one of my good friends. I could open up a CBD account, an account for my business. They would not do my credit card processing because of my business.
So you could deposit.
I could deposit
cash.
I could deposit money there
And withdraw and the whole thing, debit card if you needed.
Yeah,
right?
they would give me that to spend the money. But
Right.
but 90% of my sales is credit card sales.
And they wouldn't accept that.
They wouldn't accept it. And the reason why is because we're a hemp business. We sell CBD and THC. The banking regulations, or at least their bank had policies to where they didn't want to do that, because that's the old policy.
Yeah.
And a lot of banks are still in that old form of doing so, because it is categorized as Schedule 1. If they move it to Schedule 3, hopefully that'll ease up the banks, because the banks want the money. I mean, there's a lot of money to be deposited.
For sure.
But it's still an issue for the banks, and it's an issue for us. And plus, there's also, as a Schedule 3, like I said, it's going to pull a lot of people off the sidelines. There'll be broader acceptance and use of hopefully the products. Now, with the Section 3 classification, if it goes there, you also need to put some regulations on it too, because in this business, there are a lot of bad players, and that's where all the negative news comes from, like the Neptune elixir or fix that we talked about.
Yeah,
that
drink.
gas station drink we talked about. Now, the other thing is, I look at it like you got to treat it like alcohol. Alcohol. If you go into a bar, you can't take that drink out on the street. From what I know, you can maybe pour it in a cup and nobody would know.
Yeah, like Beale Street in Memphis. There's certain areas that will let you drink.
But if I go
downtown like that, but it's closed off the traffic.
But if you go into a normal bar and they give you a bottle of beer, you can't walk out of that bar with that. Or if they give you some whiskey, you can't walk out of that facility.
You can't buy it to go.
Yeah,
like, hey,
you can't buy it to go.
You got to either inside or in the smoking section outside, right?
Correct.
The patio.
Correct. Also, alcohol. Some drinks, they put a cap on the alcohol content. I know if you buy wine in a grocery store, anything in a grocery store that's alcoholic has to have no more than 5% alcohol in it.
And regionally, because of I traveled a lot being a musician, and you go up to like North Dakota, the beer that you buy at the store is a lower alcohol rate.
Really?
Yes, regulated. So because I think they realize there's so much little to do up there in long winters or whatever.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of drinking issues up there. So yes, less alcohol content in the beers.
Well, I know, and hey, Wisconsin, I love you because I don't know what's going on in Wisconsin, but I've heard it's very cold up there. Kind of what you said. Everybody up there drinks all winter long.
They don't have restrictions. Wisconsin's a fun party state.
Yeah, that's what. But what we've started to see online is a lot of purchases from Wisconsin because people are getting off the alcohol and buying these products in replace of it. And I'm having customers tell me about how they're just their body, they're getting off the addiction of alcohol. Their body feels better. Their mind is better. It's all around just improving their lives. But yeah, I guess I've never lived in a state where it snows 8 feet high every year. But and I don't
fun.
I don't want to live in one because I don't like snow. But if I was snowed in like I was last week, yeah, I could see myself partaking a lot. In other podcasts, I've talked about how these cannabinoids, CBD, THC, always get the negative side of things. You're never told the full story. And here's a perfect example. Now, by the time our listeners hear this podcast, it'll be old news because it's January now, and this podcast probably won't hit until early March.
Right.
But in California this week, a girl that stabbed her boyfriend 108 times and killed him went to court and got probation. 100 hours of community service was her punishment. And the reason for that is the judge said, well, she took 2 hits off a bong that they were smoking together, and it caused her to go into a violent psychotic rage and stab her boyfriend. So it wasn't her fault. Now, one, I think that's BS. But I'm not in the courtroom. I hate to play judge because only the people in the courtroom really know everything. But what really irritated me about it was I was watching the news that night and they were talking about this case. And one of the commentators said, they're talking about moving cannabis to a Section 1 to a Section 3 drug. Do they know what they are doing? Studies have shown that cannabis causes more violent psychotic rages or episodes than LSD, than cocaine, than meth, even more than alcohol. And I'm sitting there listening to that going,
no one's ever been abusive while drinking.
Yeah. Or people smoking are more people smoking cannabis are more abusive than the people that drink. I've gotten complete opposite stories from police officers.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I call BS. And I'm sure this commentator did some research and they probably cherry picked certain things. What they did not say, and the questions that I had for this report was, where did this girl, if the marijuana caused this, where did she buy this? Did she buy it off the street? Was the marijuana laced with another substance? What was the THC content of this marijuana? Was it super duper high, like 85, 90%, which that's not marijuana. That's spiked marijuana.
PCP, angel dust. You know, back in the 90s, that was always the big thing. They laced with angel dust.
Because if they bought this cannabis at a store, then it's traceable. And they can trace everything on it. None of that was said. None of that was even investigated, at least on the news report. I'm sure in the judge, maybe they did. I don't know. But the story was so one-sided that I'm like, look, there's a lot of questions that you're not really digging into. And those are the questions that people really need to know because you're sitting here saying CBD and THC and cannabis all together cause more violent psychotic episodes than all these other hard addictive drugs. No, I just do not.
Well, let me punch in because I always try to pull from my experiences.
I do too.
I have tried LSD several times in my late teens. I hated it. It's awful. Some people can handle it. My system didn't like it. So I'd have what's called a bad trip, right? But even a good trip, you are hallucinating. Things are moving that shouldn't be moving, okay? I would suggest to this lady on Fox News, okay, Monday, take 2 hits off a joint. Following Monday, take a hit of acid and come talk to me to see the difference.
Well, the other thing they didn't get into is THC is good for certain neurological conditions. However, it can be terrible for certain neurological conditions. I'll give you an example. If you're a schizophrenic, if you suffer from schizophrenia, you take THC, that's like throwing gas on the fire.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be terrible for you. They never got into, did this girl have a neurological condition that she didn't know about?
Yeah. Could
she have been borderline schizophrenic, took 2 hits off a bong and just went psychotic? That could have happened. But this is just an example about how the news and our society takes these cannabinoids and will only report half the story, or not. They never report the good stuff. They always report the bad. And when they report the bad, they don't dig enough to find out what really caused it. It's just, oh, well, it's marijuana. I mean, marijuana's dangerous. It's these cannabis. And that is not true. And that is where the misconception of our society's idea, how we look at this drug, and then what the science says about it, that is why there's such a huge gap. And that is what we're trying to close.
Think about the message that court ruling is giving everybody.
Well,
okay. So if I smoke some weed and I punch somebody in the face that I don't like, hey, I'm good. Sorry. I was under the influence. I didn't know what I was doing.
We all
20 hours, of community service. What?
And we all know if cannabis was not involved in this, if these 2 individuals were just sitting at home taking shots like college students would do,
she'd be getting
and just drinking
3 life sentences.
Yeah. And she was basically just drunk and stabbed her boyfriend 100 times, she would be in jail.
Done.
Alcohol wouldn't be an excuse.
All done. Prison for life.
So I don't understand the ruling. I know in Mississippi, I would like to think she'd be going to jail. But I know if it was alcohol and not cannabis, if it was alcohol-based, she'd be going to jail. There'd be no question. You're not going to be able to use alcohol as an excuse to commit a crime.
Sorry, Judge. I just had too much tequila. I have a bad reaction to margaritas.
Yeah.
And I lost control and stabbed my boyfriend 100 times.
Because if that was the case, nobody would ever have a job. What they do is go get drunk, rob a bank, and if they got away with it, great. And if they got caught, well, Judge, I was drunk.
So please, to the listeners, don't feel like you can get high and go break a law and get away with it.
Yeah, please do not.
We do not condone that. We disagree with this court ruling in many, many ways.
Correct. That is 100% correct. Well, folks, I hope you learned something today. I hope that kind of closes the gap for you. That's the end of our podcast today. Please like and subscribe if you get on YouTube and listening to the podcast, or Apple or Spotify or our website. Feel free to go to the website, hempvillecbd.com. Take a look at what we have. There's a coupon code for you for 20% off just because you listen to this podcast. It's called the HVP20. You put that in the coupon code box and it'll give you 20% off your order. Or if you don't come to the website, come to the store if you're local. We'd be glad to see you, answer any questions you have, and give you the best advice we can.
What's the address again? 562
Goodman Road, South Haven, Mississippi. And folks, it's called Hempville CBD. Hemp, help educate more people. Ville, we all live in the same community. We should all be looking out after each other. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next week. If you found this podcast helpful, I'd appreciate it if you took a minute to subscribe, rate, review, and follow us at hempvillecbd.com. This increases the reach to more people who are trying to navigate through the changing cannabis market and its products so that we can create a more knowledgeable consumer. Take a screenshot and tag me in your social stories to friends. It means the world to me to know that this podcast has positively helped you and that we get to be a part of your journey. Thank you, and until next time, here's to a better life.